is my pleasure to introduce Lyle Perman. He and his wife founded Rock Hills Ranch near Lowry, South Dakota in 1976. They're joined by their son Luke, his wife Naomi, and their 4 children, which will be the 5th and 6th generations of the family farm. They are active in organizations including the Cattlemen's, South Dakota Farm Bureau, Grassland Coalition, South Dakota Eggland Trust, and their local church. They speak frequently about ranch management practices, and Lyle's wife, Garnett, writes articles for the Grassland Coalition newsletter, as well as a bi-monthly column titled On the 100th Meridian for a local newspaper. The family was honored to receive the 2014 Aldo Leopold Conservation Award and the 2014 National Environmental Stewardship Award from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. They are active proponents of conservation, especially as it relates to soil health and grasslands.
Thank you, Bailey. So you can see what our mission is, and I talk about the inhabitants, both domestic and wild. I'm going to have the domesticated inhabitants, some of them stand up, so you can see our family. This is my wife, Garnet, and our son, Luke, daughter-in-law, Naomi, and then, by the way, our grandchildren are not just above average, but they're genetically enhanced, for those of you that are wondering. Isaac and Ella are 14 as of the 14th of January, and Micah and Noah are our 10-year-olds. They have an October birthday, and yes, 2 sets of twins. So you can talk, that's why I say they're genetically enhanced, on Grandma's side of the family. But as you look over our ranch headquarters, one thing I want to point out, in this corner right here, #1 profit center. That's our laying hens. At 50 cents an egg, you do the math. My 14 hens, you can just about feed our family in terms of what they can generate, but we give all the eggs away. But right now, the chicken business is the thing to be in, for those of you that aren't aware where eggs are priced at. But we're honored to not just receive the award we're going to get later today, but for me to tell you our story about our ranch. We're located north central South Dakota, and of course, we're over here now, so it's in south central Walworth County where we're at. My first ancestors came during Dakota Territory's times in 1885. This is a picture of my great-grandfather, and here he is. Here's my grandpa, and here's one of my great-uncles. First tractor that came into our area. So our family has always tried to do things that make the community talk about what we're doing, and that really hasn't changed much. This is a picture of my siblings, and I'm talking today about our succession plan, what we're doing, and our transition. But sometimes you learn the hard way. You learn from our mistakes. And so when I talked to my dad about succession and what his plans were, of my 5 siblings, there's 6 of us, he didn't want to talk about it. He'd leave the room. My dad, in December of 2003, had a stroke. And in February 2004, he asked me to start helping him handle things because he couldn't figure out how to do it. And he passed away in September of 2004, so just 20 years ago. But the will that he had was over 20 years old at the time. And so you can imagine things needed to change in that 20-year time period from 1979 to 2004. There was a lot of things that happened, but he never addressed them because he just didn't like to. And so I learned, because it was put upon me, because I was part of the operation, to try and right the ship. And so I learned a lot about what not to do. So Garnet and I got married in 1976. We went through some very difficult times. Those of you that operated at that time know what high interest rates are. If we think 9 is high, try 17.5, 18. I didn't pay 21, but some people did. I paid 17.5, but not for long. That just is not sustainable. So I did a lot of different things to try and survive. But at the end of the day, Garnet and I managed to pay all our bills, to expand our ranch, and to bring the next generation in. And so this is a picture of our family. Luke and Naomi, as you know, they're here with us. But then we've got a daughter, son-in-law, and 4 grandchildren that live in Franklin, Tennessee, near Franklin, Tennessee, and an acreage there. And so one child is on the ranch, one that isn't. So, the question is, how do you treat them? And what is fair? What is equal? Well, we've learned that there is no such thing as equal, but we try and treat both of them fairly. So the first thing that we started to do, Luke graduated from college in 2007 and married in 2006 and married in 2007, correct? Okay. So basically, once he graduated from college, Garnet and I started incorporating them into ownership in the business. And so we just write a general agreement. You can see what's up here with some of the numbers back to 2018. But we try to identify equipment, land, livestock, and basically we started back in shortly after they came back, leasing them everything. And then at the end of the year, Luke has, to this day, the option to pay us in cash or livestock. So my percentage of the calf crop, he still does pay me, in livestock, but if he wants to, he can buy them from me and pay in cash. Hay or the equipment, same way. He can write me a check for leasing by the hour, or he can give me livestock. And the ultimate goal is that he learns how to handle the income and expense of running the business with me still being part of it, and Garnet and I still able to have earned income. But we literally lease everything to him. To start with, like in the case of the bulls, I own the bulls, he leased them, but then as the bulls needed to be replaced, he bought them. In the case of the cows, do I keep replacement heifers every year? Pretty well, don't I? Or don't I?
Well, you're going to buy bred heifers from me.
So I'm finding out what I'm doing this year. All right, so this year I'm buying bred replacement heifers from him. I like to talk at meetings like this so he's here, because then I've got witnesses. This is what you're going to do this year, Dan. So anyway, but it's really worked well, because when Luke came back to the operation, he would call me, and this is the change that's occurred. He would call me and say, Dad, the second weekend in June, we're gone. We're going to go camping. All right? Then I would make sure that, if I was going to do something that I had to work around his schedule. Well, that's changed. Probably, would you say, for at least the last 10 years, Luke is the one that lines up the vet, or lines everything up. And before he schedules something, this is one of the things that's changed. Before he scheduled something years ago, he would say, Dad, we're going to be working cattle the second week in June. Does that work for you? Well, the thing that's changed is now he calls me and says, Dad, we're working cattle the second week in February at your place. It doesn't matter if you're there or not. We're going to do it at your place. And yeah, if it works, we would want you to be involved. But if it doesn't, we're going to do it. And so I'm really in a good place. And for those of you that are younger and you've got dreams of what you want to do in life, I'm just going to tell you, I am living my dream. And I can get pretty emotional as I talk about it. But this is what a father lives for, is to bring the next generation into your business, to have a relationship like I do with our family. I'm just going to tell you, I am absolutely living my dream. And so this is a little bit of our story and how we do it. So one of the things that we do, my bank asks for a balance sheet every year. Most of you, if you're getting money from a lender, they want a balance sheet. So I am really detailed what I put in my balance sheet, because I learned. My dad died, and we handled his estate. Then at about 10 months or a year after, we closed the estate. That's just what you do, thinking that everything's done. But probably 6 months after we closed the estate, here came a check from a co-op that Dad was a part of that had merged, and they had kept their books open for I don't know how many years until they had all their expenses, and now they were cashing it out. Well, we had no clue that Dad still had assets there. The state of South Dakota has literally millions of dollars in unclaimed property, and it's things like that that end up in it. It doesn't pay to reopen Dad's estate so we can cash the check. We just let the state get it. So this balance sheet that I've completed, it is extremely detailed. And I will tell you that we didn't do it this past summer, did we, Luke? I don't think so, Garnet, Naomi. Was it this past summer or the summer before? In 2004, we sat down? Okay, so in 2024, we sit down for sure every other year. If something happens to Garnet and I, who is going to be handling our affairs? Our children. We go through this balance sheet with them and tell them absolutely everything that's on it. There's absolutely no secrets. We go through it and we say, all right, Kaiser, this is what you're going to get. Luke, this is what you're going to get. And so they know what we've got, they know what they're going to get, and we know that when we pass, that there's not going to be issues because everything is fully disclosed. So that's one of the things we do. We do have a will that spells all of that out, and they get a copy of it. Here's our will, and here's what it says. So they don't sit and read it when we're having this family meeting, but they know what the will says. We've got a power of attorney for health care. Something happens to us, this is what we want for end of life. Durable power of attorney. This is a document that if we're not able to take care of ourselves and then unable to make decisions, that this allows them to make those decisions for us. This is a very important part that we learned with my parents. My dad didn't qualify for long-term care insurance, my mom did. My dad was in a nursing home for about 5 months, and typical for that stage and that time period, cash poor, asset rich. So my dad died in September of 2004. Had my dad lived the rest of that year, by 2005, we would have been liquidating land to pay for long-term care. Recently, we put my mother in an independent living facility in Aberdeen. I connected to it as a long-term care facility. $121,000 a year to stay in that long-term care facility. You can burn through a lot of cash in a short time. So Garnet and I have got long-term care insurance because we want our family to have choices on how our long-term care is going to be paid for if we end up in one of those facilities, because at $10,000 a month, it takes a lot of cash for you to stay in those. So you have to be thinking about that, and hopefully we never need to use it, but if we do, they'll have choices on how they're going to finance our care. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the transition of assets, but the succession of any business is dependent on not just how you transfer the assets, but how you transfer what you've got between your ears. You know, your knowledge of running the business. We started out with our children at a young age. I didn't have any pictures of them, but I do have pictures of grandchildren. And so these are just some pictures that I take of grandchildren that happen to be helping Grandpa. But that's extremely important. If you want to have your next generation involved in your business, what are you doing to facilitate that? These young people that are here today that are with me, the business end of it at this point in time is not that important to them to convey that. But teaching them about how to do things for us starts at a young age. And so these are just some of the pictures of things that we've done to do that. We like to teach them not just about the work, but also some of the other things that inhabited our ecosystem. That is a bull snake, and he is alive, and Grandpa did catch him and handle them in a manner that, according to the people that know the proper way to handle, what we did was fine. You guys still remember that, don't you? All right. So they loved learning about plants and insects and animals, and so we take the time when we're out, if we see something interesting. This year I've really started to work on birds, haven't I, Micah? Can you remember some of the birds that we talked about? Did we talk about did you see a bobolink? Remember the bobolinks that we saw? And so other things like that. And so when it's not just all about work, but it's teaching them a little bit about nature. This is a beaver dam here. I thought it was pretty interesting that he thought he had to put a post on his lodge, but he did. And so it's just things like that that I think are important if you want to bring the next generation in. And of course, this is some of the work part of it. Ella, raise your hand. Ella probably has given more shots than anybody on our ranch this past year. Thousands, I'm guessing. Would you say, Ella? She's pretty shy. And by the way, if you want to see one of the best artists for her age in the state of South Dakota, the governor's recognized some of Ella's artwork. And so I'm surprised she's not sketching right now, because usually she's got a pad and a pencil and she's sketching anytime she's sitting. But anyway, she's a very accomplished artist. So bottom line, in your operation, at least in ours, have an estate and business succession plan in writing. Have a detailed inventory of your assets. I'm going to fault my dad for not reviewing periodically. Our will now is probably about 2 years old, but I would say about every 5 to 7 years, or any time there's any major change in your operation, you need to go back and see your attorney. Communicate. I'd say that's the number one thing that most people don't spend enough time doing, and that's communicating with your family, with your spouse about, the do's and don'ts. How am I coming, Bailey, for time?
You're good.
I'm good? And then involve family in daily activities. Now, I will tell you, for business structure, we're a sole proprietor. We're not incorporated. We don't have an LLC. We don't have a trust. What works for us may or may not work for you. So what I'm telling you we've done, it's maybe not going to be for everybody else in terms of structure, how your business is structured. But some of the principles absolutely are. Have a plan, communicate that plan, and then make sure and involve your family in the transactions of your operation. And I'm going to tell you that without exception, I've probably given this talk, and sometimes they give me more time than we're allotted this morning, but I'm going to tell you that 90% of the time, the problem is it's because Dad not wanting to share with the rest of the family what his intentions are. So I'm talking about my peers, my generation. So what are you doing to convey what your wishes are with your children? With that, I'll open it up. If you've got any questions, tell me what I'm doing wrong, ask suggestions. Yes?
If you're leasing all the equipment and cattle, who handles the repairs, such as machine repairs, fence repair, things like that?
Well, Luke. But that doesn't mean if he sends me to town for parts on my tractor that I won't pay for it. But would you say that's about right? That's the way we do it. It all depends on how you set it up. But the way it's set up, he pays me. And my father-in-law and brother-in-law were in the implement business. And so I asked them, what are fair rental rates? And so we set it, and I give Luke a good deal, let's put it that way, on the rental. But yeah, it's so much an hour. We have 10 minutes left. So much an hour that I charge him. And so January 1st, we write down how many hours are on the tractor, and December 31st, how many did you use? And then we just set it up that way, just like if you were renting that tractor from an equipment dealer. And the baler, it's so much a bale. And on the hay ground, it's so much a bale. Or I can go so much an acre. So we can go either way on that. And the cattle, it's just a percentage. Yes?
How have you handled your transfer of the land?
We still own the land. Now, you know, that's a good question, because here's the thing that's come along, and I'm not going to be afraid to share with you how we've done some of this. So we knew some of the land that Luke was leasing was going to come up for sale, but he didn't have the equity. So Garnet and I, at our age, we could have bought it. And then we probably would have had to incur some debt, but we could have bought it very easily. So our thinking was, why should we buy it? So the property that Luke lives on with his family and his building site at that point in time still belonged to us. So we did what you're not supposed to do. We gave it to him. And why do I say that? Well, because you lose the opportunity for stepped up basis when you gift. And you lose also some of your estate exemption when you pass, for federal purposes. But our thinking was, let them incur the debt. And the only time you're going to pay a capital gains tax is if you sell it. So they knew when we gifted it to them, but by the way, when we die, they're going to get it anyway. So let's give it to them now. It's their place, what they live on. They can use that for equity to buy this additional ground. And so at this point in time, we still own probably, would you say, 2/3 of the deeded acres, and you guys own 1/3?
Yeah, maybe
Some-
like that much.
So somewhere in that neighborhood. But that's just our approach to it, because we might not make it home today. And so, pardon me?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so that's just what we did.
So Lyle, where you gifted that quarter or whatever, where Luke is at.
Sure.
So when you guys pass away, that's in Luke.
Right.
So now it would get the step up basis when he passes.
Right, it could, if he still owns it when he passes, it will get a stepped up basis at that point.
At that point.
Right.
Without any.
Right.
Yes.
So it only is a problem if Luke and Naomi decide they're gonna sell it.
Yes.
Then they're gonna pay capital gains based on what Garnet and I paid for it, because we gifted it to them.
Correct.
But, so then, okay, somebody's gonna ask it or wondering, now we got a daughter in Tennessee. Well, we do have some cash assets, and we've done some things to help them too. Now, is it a dollar for dollar? Not even close. But we are doing some things to help them also that they really appreciate. And our son-in-law is a financial advisor, just like Heather does the same work that Heather does yesterday, or talked about yesterday. So I told them, I said, and so we give him money to invest, give them money to invest for Garnet and I, and who knows, it might not be there when they, when we pass away, because maybe we'll need it. We don't know. But if we don't need it, their inheritance is going to be based on his ability to invest it wisely. So anyway, we're taking care of both, and they both our children know exactly what they're going to get. And so far, we're still exchanging Christmas cards. And that's what's important. How are we doing for time, Bailey? 5 minutes. All right, yes.
Would you allow your family to provide long-term care for you instead of incurring that cost?
There are some families where the children will buy the long-term care to protect the assets. So yes, in some cases they do it. Some people, life.
Actually taking care of you on.
Oh, taking care of us on there. That would not be.
Don't give me ideas.
Yeah, no, there you go. No, right. We've already talked to it. So I've asked this question. We've got 8 grandchildren. And when I ask the question, who wants to move into Grandpa and Grandma's house? Lots of hands go up. So to be frank with you, when one of these are old enough and want to move in, we're out of there. Because we've got a pretty nice home. It was built in 2009, but you know, why would we want to be in the middle of the operation where everything's happening, and they're in town driving out to work? They're the ones that should be there, not us. And so we've already talked about it, and it's a conversation we have. Isn't that right? Haven't I asked you guys who's going to move into Grandpa's house? Nor are you still thinking you might want to? Sure. So the argument's not going to be if anybody wants to, it's going to be who. And so, but yeah, as far as taking care of us, probably not. When Garnet and I cannot take care of ourselves, then we're not going to be there. We've even thought about, even building another structure on the ranch that is a single level, easy to get in and out of, kind of just something for Grandpa and Grandma to live in. And until we need to move in it, maybe if one of these come back from college, it'd be a good place for them to live until we're ready to swap places. And so that's even a thought that's gone through our mind. But why would we take a 4-bedroom home and 2 old people live in it when we got a young family that's got, just got married or has children? Why would we stay in our home when we need to allow them that opportunity to move in? So in a lot of the things we're doing on our ranch, I'm thinking ahead and saying, all right, I can see that before I die, this needs to be done, and we're trying to do some of that right now, whether it's putting steel on a roof of a building or rebuilding a fence. We're trying to look in the future, because the last thing a 22-year-old needs to have is a lot of expense like those sort of things when they come back. Other questions? Don't be afraid to ask. Yes?
What was the transition from giving up the management of the day-to-day operation to Luke? How was that transition, just stepping back and allowing him to do the management versus you being necessarily?
Well, I can tell you a real turning point for me. I can still remember the day. I'm pretty meticulous when it comes to building fence. Would you say that, Luke? Would you agree? So I've had them tear stuff out that isn't straight, let's put it that way. The cows didn't care, but I did. And I can still remember driving, and I don't remember what type of medical appointment I was heading to, but I was unable to rebuild that fence east of Lowry that you guys built. Remember that? And I remember driving by it, and it was only maybe a quarter of a mile of fence that they were building for me. And that was a turning point for me, because that's something that no one is going to rebuild my fences, because I don't know that they can do it good enough. And Luke proved to me, Dad, without you, we can do it right, we can do it good enough. And I think it's just something that, for me, I had already started the transition of the business, but that was a watershed event that now, if it needs to be done, either Luke or one of our, we've got an employee who's not here today, or I'd introduce him, that really does a good job also, and has learned how I like things done. And we do have contractors that build fence for us now too. But anyway, it started actually in 2006. It wasn't something that just happened overnight. But by allowing them to rent it on a share basis, that is the start of that transition.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
Well, it kind of goes back to involving the kids in the day-to-day stuff, because I would argue it went back to probably the early 90s when we were still AI heifers, and Dad would give me this like Sire's catalog and say, all right, pick out a few bulls. And so I have to go through and look at EPDs and traits and stuff. And so I think just little things like that over time, it wasn't just this year you're in charge. It was a long process of understanding what it is that I was going to be in charge of.
I'm just going to make one other quick comment. Are we done? Okay. So you can see that it's primarily ranch ground, but we also farm. And Brett, will you stand up or raise your hand? So Brett Hubers is our resident farmer. So Brett and Luke, and these two could put on a talk on how to do things also in business-wise. Brett does our farming, and Luke takes care of his family's livestock and grass. And so we're just really happy that Brett is here with us today too. And like I said, the two of them could put on a seminar or a presentation on how you can farm and ranch together. And Brett is a great farmer, and Luke is a great cattleman. And between the two of them, they really do a good job together. So with that, all right, we're going to be around today, and so this afternoon I think we're on a panel, right, Bailey? Okay, well, thank you for coming.